name correctly. Is it Steven or Stefan?
Steven.
Steven?
Yes.
All right, good. So first off, I'd like to thank you for coming to speak to all of us today,
Oh, sure.
especially on short notice as well. So since I know, is it okay if we just ask some questions, or do you have anything to share, or is it gonna be mainly Q&A?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can share just kind of very quickly, in terms of our efforts at the site, Friends of the Ruin. We've actually, in the past month, we've spent meeting with kind of New York City and New York State electeds, to really push forward this idea of a memorial park dedicated to kind of public health at the Smallpox Hospital site. So we've met with, the mayor's office and New York City council members' offices, presented it to community boards, things like that. So, there seems to be a real energy behind it, and that's, excitement. So, and we're hopeful. That's kind of all the news I have on it, kind of our efforts, and I can't wait to see what you all have put together.
All right. Yes, thank you. So I'll just start off the discussion. So currently we're trying to all the teams that are working on smallpox. We're currently figuring out how we would design. So we were curious as to what's your personal vision on smallpox. Like, what have you been wanting to see from smallpox?
Right. Oh, that's a great question. Oh, sorry, I'm drinking a hot tea. This is not like beer or anything like that. My vision for the Smallpox Hospital, and really why I established Friends of the Ruin, is I would love to see the building, stabilized as a ruin. There's something very interesting about the fact that its landmark designation by the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission is that of a smallpox hospital ruin. It's our country's only landmark ruin. So I would love to see it stabilized, permanently stabilized as a ruin, and that's what Megan is working on, and Rob Bates at Walter Melvin Architects, and landscaped as a ruin. So you think of it as a public park, almost a landscape within it, kind of trees and seating within and without. I see as kind of a wonderful addition to the New York City park system. It's what you would call an adaptive reuse, which is actually what you all are doing. Really, the term adaptive reuse is kind of, not, we don't use it that often in kind of non-architecture lingo, but it's certainly a term that you all should become very acclimated with. But things like the High Line is certainly an adaptive reuse, taking an industrial part of New York City and converting it to a use other than its original designation. Think of, so many old buildings in New York City. I think of Anthology Film Archives. It was once a courthouse, and now it's a movie theater. Or so I think you all are doing an interesting job, kind of challenging what would be a good reuse of this building. I assume none of you are turning it back into a smallpox hospital, or back into a nursing school. Maybe some of you, but you can, considering how do you reuse what was once very strictly a hospital medical building, and how do you present it in the public light?
Thank you. Ooh, okay. So since you're saying adaptive reuse, and we want to incorporate the history of smallpox and continue it, let that live on. So how do you think we could incorporate that history while if we still want to move into more of a modern design?
Wow, I really appreciate that question. Um, well, I think that there is, you know, um, there are certainly kind of wonderful historical components of the building. I don't know if actually you know this, but there's an inscription above each of the north, center, and southern bays. There's an inscription of a one woman's name above each of the door frames there, and it was just a woman who was really a champion of it as a nursing school. There are, so that's kind of a wonderful historical, very literal historical aspect of the building. Um, I think, I think you're I think how each of you, and I know so many of you are really focused probably on the architectural components, but let's say you're outfitting this as a restaurant or a dance club or a movie theater or however you may be kind of thinking about it. I think one thing that you is important to understand, and I imagine Mr. Codio would really kind of be very tickled by and interested by this as well, is how do you landscape it? Either is there landscaping on the interior or on the exterior? We see it as kind of this historical building because, and it's made more evident by the overgrowth of the vines, by the trees inside. So, how do you kind of preserve maybe aspects of that, both either on the exterior of your building or on its interior? Um, I think there are certainly, the fact that the building was built by prisoners is a very kind of there's a sadness to that, and really a challenging kind of historical, something we have to confront. And how do you speak to that? How do you really kind of remember maybe those who died in the building? Certainly, if it becomes a dance club, maybe there's a garden out front that honors those who maybe succumbed to smallpox, or honors the nurses that were there, and maybe that's a landscape component or a water feature or a lighting component, or I think there are ways that you can still honor the history of it while bringing it to the fore, to the present.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't even. That was really interesting. Um, so
Haley, if you don't mind, I'd like to
yeah,
just jump in real quick. Real quick, two questions. You mentioned the woman or her name. What was her name again?
The names of the women. I can get that for you, and I'll send
Yeah,
it
I
to the
would.
group.
Yeah, I would greatly
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Okay. I don't know if any of you guys have Instagram, but there's a post on one of the names on the NYC Ruin Instagram, and I believe it has all of that information there. But I'll double check.
Got it. And another question I had was, well, for my group specifically, one of the concepts that we had was building a community center. So I was wondering, is there any ideas or any activities that you feel the community needs the most, or is very urgent throughout the community?
Oh, that's great. That you are considering that. So often, architects come in and kind of have visions that bulldoze community input. I know Mr. Codio and the whole team would not want that. Um, I think just that program alone, a community center, is really interesting. And if you think about, what are components of a community center that this island would really enjoy, I have to believe it's very much there. And they have a lot of focus on the arts on the island as well as on healthcare. So I would think, things like a pottery studio, a painting studio, maybe a place to develop photography in your community center, maybe a kind of a health/recreation room, if that's a basketball court or a handball court within the building, or maybe outside of the building, maybe a basketball. Wouldn't it be fascinating if there were a basketball court in the backyard and things like that? I always tend to think of the community as really enjoying those two aspects, both the arts, and then things that have to do with recreation and health.
Thank you. We actually had some of those ideas in mind, so
Oh,
it's good
good.
to know that
Okay.
we're heading in the right direction.
Definitely.
so yeah, I know that you did touch basically from what Gilbert said. So I was gonna say, like, have you heard about the opinion of like the community? I know that you said how it's more of a artsy place, and like that we could incorporate pottery, painting, photography. Have you heard specifically about what's wanted within the community, or maybe what the community lacks that we could input?
I think there are certain things that I can tell you the community probably doesn't want, or if it happened, it would need to have kind of a special community focus. The idea of it being turned into like um, an exclusive hotel, that kind of, the community, for example, they're not so interested in that because it locks them out. But maybe it's a hotel that, provides kind of a nursery for the community's school or the community's children on the ground floor. So I think maybe you're introducing something like an exclusive restaurant. But then if you think about the community, maybe there are components of that restaurant where you say, oh, but we want to make sure the community comes and feels like this is theirs, so we're going to include, you know, a dining hall just for them. If they want to rent it out and use it, they have access to it whenever they want. Things like that. So in terms of kind of what the community, those are, I think I can only probably tell you best what the community doesn't want, and it's something that excludes them. Does that answer your question, Haley?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Okay.
So I would like to maybe. Oh, Gilbert, I see.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that actually opened up a lot. That explains a lot because I was wondering, what would be something? Not what would be something. What would be better, having something that was more exclusive or more open to the general audience? So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
So I was gonna say maybe if you would like to hear from what some of the teams have worked on. I know that they've sent you updates, but maybe if they would like to discuss what their concept has been. I know Gilbert and I, along with Maya and Joshua, our team, that we were thinking about the community center. So we want to incorporate activities for the community to do. So if any of the other smallpox teams would like to speak and introduce what they were thinking and maybe get Stephen's feedback.
Yeah, so I wanted to turn the building into a children's museum so the youth can really know about the building and they can go there and interact. So I just wanted to know your feedback on that.
I think that's a wonderful idea. Whenever people are proposing museums, I actually, for the site, I love to encourage you to really explore not just the idea of a museum, but actually, so really you would select art pieces that you think would be meaningful to this museum. Maybe it's a huge Tom Sachs sculpture in the lobby, or maybe it's an amazing jungle gym that you've designed or another artist has designed in the backyard, or maybe you envision kind of a wonderful hanging mobile by Alexander Calder to be sat right in the center when you walk through the front door. So whenever I hear the word museum, I light up because I love the idea, but also I think it's important for architects to think about kind of what would they want in that museum. Maybe not just kind of here's a gallery, here's a gallery, here's a gallery, but maybe here's a gallery and we're going to focus on XYZ art. And then this is going to be all produced by children. And this is going to be the history of, a child's history of Roosevelt Island, or, things like that. So I love a museum, and then I love it when architects think really creatively, not just about the space, but about what the walls hold.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Megan, would you like to speak on what you're designing or concept is?
Should I answer Ryan's question?
Oh, Ryan says, how does the community play a role in your projects and designs?
Yeah, so actually, Ryan, that's a terrific question. When we were envisioning kind of not just a public park, but now really a public park memorial to health, the community really kind of was very interested in that. And groups we've spoken to are kind of scattered across the community, both from Cornell Tech professors to librarians to moms and dads. But one thing with COVID, COVID, very unfortunately, many of the residents of Roosevelt Island, their lives were lost to COVID. Both public safety officers and kind of older residents on the northern end of the island. So there's really a local response, a local history. This was, COVID was very much a local story as much as it was an international story. So that's been a part of our planning, and kind of how do we memorialize that in this public park.
All right, thank you. So would you say when we're thinking about redesigning, should we think about COVID, or should we like kind of maybe not incorporate into our designs, or what do you think on that?
I think with regards to COVID, I would really encourage you. Eventually we'll get back to a normal pace, a normal life. But I would encourage you certainly to maybe not so much. Certainly don't feel compelled to make a memorial to COVID at the Smallpox Hospital. That's by no means my goal, nor probably Mr. Codio's goal or anyone. But I think understanding the history of smallpox, both in this country and across the country and across the world is really interesting. Actually, if it was understood that you had smallpox and you were living in Manhattan or other boroughs, you were taken by police force to the Smallpox Hospital. It was very contagious, just like COVID, and it's the lethality of it was also incredibly scary. Actually, if you got smallpox, COVID affects your lungs. Smallpox, you broke out in huge welts, and then those actually kind of would invade your interior, and it was a horrible, horrible, painful death. So anyway, but the relevance and the history, I think, is especially illuminating right now. And what does this building become?
All right, thank you. Do you think that there's a way that we could get what we're doing here, what our teams are doing here, and get it to the community, so maybe we could get their input on our design proposal and how they feel about it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think who would respond. Let me get back to you. It's hard. It's a maybe there's a teacher on the island, or I'm just trying to think who would be a great person to respond. Let me get back to you on that.
All right, thank you. And I guess just to end it off, do you feel like there's anything that we should add, or anything? I'm sorry, or anything that you would like to see us do in particular?
Every year you guys come up with the most interesting designs. So I don't want to, I'm always really impressed. And, I've seen amazing restaurants conceived there. I've seen wonderful dance halls. I've seen community spaces. I've seen galleries. Just wonderful ideas. So I don't want to box you in. I would encourage you to really explore. I think, I guess my whole thing is, architecture and landscape are two very important components. So if you want to think about, architectural elements, I would encourage you to also think of landscaping components. And one thing, and this is just in terms of your design, some of you feel your design has to fill the entire space, but sometimes you can actually leave you could leave a section of the ground floor open and have it be an interior exterior space, have it be a landscape inside. Some of you really like to kind of fill it entirely. I encourage you to maybe leave some of the wild aspects within it. I think the building. Some of you also you want to fill it all the way to the top. Maybe you go a little bit higher. Maybe some of your building actually extends beyond the frame of the structure. Maybe you build kind of a basement below. I think there's a lot to explore in terms of scale, height, envelope.
All right, thank you. So maybe we could have maybe like a Zoomy, or put a sign on like in the area talking about the reimagination of Smallpox Hospital. Would that be something that we could? you.
Perhaps the one thing with putting signage on the around the building is it has to be approved by New York State. I doubt it would happen soon. You know it becomes a bit draconian in terms of getting the state involved. But maybe maybe one thing we could do is actually have someone from Four Freedoms Park respond to your designs because they're immediately next door, and really have you kind of speak to them. Maybe I could have one of them come to our next meeting, or we could set up a Zoom with them. How does that sound?
Oh yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. So
Okay.
whenever you can figure that out, you can always email me back, and we can definitely plan something.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for taking your time out to speak to us. Definitely helped me, my team, and all of us working on Smallpox for sure. Because I know personally we've been struggling thinking about, what could we design, this and that, and hearing what you said definitely helped. So thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's so important to. Yeah, I would encourage you to explore this term adaptive reuse and kind of what are other successful adaptive reuses, not just in terms of kind of old buildings or landscapes, but both here and across the country. And I think that will inform your design. I think also, oh yeah, just that. I think really get your hands dirty exploring adaptive reuse.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah, pleasure.
Actually, I am happy that this was unexpected when Haley told me that we have a visitor. I'm like, someone's visiting, and it end up being you. So,
oh, good.
this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, be well. Okay, you guys stay healthy.
Me too. Take care.
Take care.